care more. Thai Sky TV, your family station.
At 6 o'clock, the parachute regiment will not be withdrawn from County Tyrone in Northern Ireland in spite of an incident which ended with 3 local people wounded. A Northern Ireland minister said the appeal court has refused to increase a 3-year sentence.
Again opened fire on thousands of anti-government protesters. First reports suggest 3 people have been killed and dozens injured. Demonstrators have taken over buses and set cars and a building on fire. Earlier today, the army broke up a massive rally and arrested hundreds, including the leader of the protest movement. Last night, at least 8 people were killed.
This is how the seesaw struggle for control of the heart of this capital unfolded this afternoon. But as the army advanced, many of the democracy activists began building new barricades on adjacent roads. The army tactic was to fire a tremendous crescendo of shots into the sky in an effort to intimidate their opponents. To start with, it did work. Hundreds fled. And for anyone caught up amid the army assault, the thought of all those bullets going up was frightening.
What we want is just a democracy. It's not a hurt. It's not a nothing. Just democracy.
Many demonstrators stayed put, huddled together on the hot road, united in demanding that the only way to end this crisis is for the Army General, recently appointed Prime Minister, to resign. One of those arrested was the Democracy Movement's leader, former Army General Chamlong Sumwang, whose last words before being taken away were, "Tell the world we will never give up our struggle for democratic rights." The general's wife was left behind, hands in the air, among the mass of activists. One has to say that what we have just witnessed has been a textbook military operation. The soldiers have been firing in the air, unlike what happened during the hours of darkness. What went wrong in part is that the peaceful protests got hijacked by troublemakers. It could have been a deliberate setup. Eventually, as hardcore rioters set fire to scores of police cars and fire engines, along with a police station, the security forces reacted with some ferocity. There were certainly some deaths and scores of people were wounded. Among those watching was a British graduate student who saw cold-blooded murder.
3 plainclothes policemen appeared. 2 of them drew revolvers and fired directly into the crowd, 7 shots in all. 10 minutes later, we saw an ambulance draw up. We ran down to the ambulance. We were told by the people on the ground that 3 people had been killed.
Now night has again fallen on this troubled capital. A petrol tanker has been set ablaze by demonstrators. We have seen images eerily reminiscent of another Asian tragedy, the crushing of the Democracy Rebellion in Peking's Tiananmen Square. The hardcore of Bangkok activists, swollen tonight by tens of thousands of sympathetic onlookers, are seizing buses to build barricades. The impact on Thailand's peaceful reputation, its tourism and money markets will be horrendous. This capital tonight is back on a collision course. Many people in this crowd talk openly of revenge for those who've died already. Brian Barron, BBC News, Bangkok.
And Brian Barron's just joined us on the telephone from Bangkok. Brian, is the trouble still going on?
It has been going on for about an hour, John. Something of a rerun of last night, I'm afraid, and certainly several dead and dying who had been shot by the army were carried into the lobby of a makeshift emergency ward in a hotel.
Let me stop you for a moment there, because we've got some pictures. I think we're going to have a look at what you're talking about there. We have some pictures of that happening. Yeah, so what is happening at this stage? They're firing on the protesters.
Right. The demonstrators had tried to move up buses, pushing it against the army-erected barbed wire. For a while the army fired into the air, but that's a rather futile attempt, as we've seen already. And then I think they finally lost patience while being taunted by the activists, and no question that they deliberately fired into the crowd, and there were fairly heavy casualties in our view.
You talked about a textbook operation earlier today. Obviously, they've thrown the textbook out of the window now.
I think what they were hoping, the government was hoping that the show of force would work, and demonstrably it hasn't worked. I think it's rather backfired, and now what we're seeing very tragically is a cycle of violence, and each time the stakes seem to get higher, each time the army loses its patience and shoots some more activists, and so it goes on.
You made a comparison with what had happened at Tiananmen Square. In that case, eventually the rioters had to give up because of sheer force. What's going to happen here in Bangkok?
I would say that it's looking rather grim, without any question that the army is in no mood to give up. There's absolutely no sign, as we understand it, from the cabinet meeting today and so forth, that General Suchinda, the Prime Minister, is going to step down and meet these democracy activist wishes. So I think we're in for an extremely rocky week.
And they're not going to give up either, you think, the demonstrators?
Not at the moment, but of course there's already a number of arrest warrants out for their leaders, for student radicals and so on. So eventually I think the iron fist will come down more heavily. And no doubt if you apply enough pressure and you're prepared to kill enough people, this will work. But of course the result is going to be absolutely catastrophic for this country.
Brian Barron in Bangkok, thank you.
The jury at the inquest...
Selling sleeping pill outweigh its risks. A medical team